welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a subject that's truly critical for human civilization, but one we maybe don't confront enough: the science and policy behind nuclear weapons.
Right. We've looked at a lot of sources, scientific studies, historical accounts, some pretty chilling policy documents, too.
And our goal here is really to lay out the facts, to understand the unthinkable consequences these weapons represent.
I think the absolute first place to start, the core distinction the sources make, is how nuclear weapons are just fundamentally different. It's about space and time.
Space and time. That feels like the anchor for this whole discussion, doesn't it?
It really is. A conventional bomb, the damage is local, it's terrible, but you can eventually clean up, rebuild, there's recovery.
But nuclear, even a so-called small one, it's instantly global in some ways, and the effects just stretch out over time, defying cleanup.
Exactly. We're talking radioactive contamination, isotopes, things that make an area dangerous, even unlivable for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. It's like a permanent wound.
To give you a sense of the power involved, think about the Oklahoma City bombing back in '95. Horrific event. That was about 2.5 tons of TNT equivalent.
Now compare that to Hiroshima, 1945. That bomb was 15 kilotons. 15,000 tons of TNT.
Wow.
That's 6,000 times more powerful than the Oklahoma City bomb.
And even that was an early, relatively crude weapon.
Yeah, absolutely. Today, modern U.S. and Russian warheads can be up to 1 megaton. That's 1,000,000 tons of TNT equivalent.
Which is what compared to Hiroshima?
About 70 times more powerful. It's hard to even wrap your head around those numbers without some context.
So what's the context? Testing.
Yeah, the Cold War tests give us some scale. The U.S. Castle Bravo test in '54, that was like 1,000 Hiroshimas.
1,000.
And the Soviet Tsar Bomba, between 50 and 58 megatons, maybe 4,000 Hiroshimas.
Unbelievable.
Castle Bravo's mushroom cloud went 25 miles high, spread 60 miles wide. That's why we have to talk about global effects. It's not just a bigger bomb. It's a different phenomenon.
And this kind of power is still very much with us. The current global arsenal, it's around 12,500 warheads.
And the vast majority, over 90%, are held by the U.S. and Russia. That capability is still the bedrock or maybe the fault line of international security.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Let's use the scenario from the sources.
Yeah.
A single, modern, 1 megaton weapon detonated over Times Square, New York City.
Right. And you've basically got two main ways to do it. An airburst, detonating high up, which maximizes the blast wave, the physical destruction.
And surface burst.
Or a surface burst hitting the ground. That kicks up enormous amounts of radioactive dirt and debris, maximizing the local fallout, the long-term radiation hazard.
Either way, the first thing is a fireball.
Yeah. About a mile wide. Temperatures like the surface of the sun, anything inside that just gone. That vaporized instantly.
Vaporized. Okay. And then the rings of destruction spreading outwards for an airburst scenario.
An airburst, yeah, that's the one designed for maximum immediate casualties. You get catastrophic blast damage buildings just flattened for miles. Then lethal radiation doses further out. And then intense heat, the thermal pulse.
Causing horrific burns.
Third-degree burns miles away. We have accounts from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, survivors describing skin literally melting. It's beyond comprehension. It's total biological destruction in the central zones.
So the human cost for that single 1 megaton air burst over Manhattan.
The estimates hover around 1.5 million dead, instantly or near instantly, and another 2 million severely injured, overwhelmed hospitals, no infrastructure left.
And going back to that time dimension, how certain are we that a single modern blast, especially a surface burst, could make a city like New York unlivable for centuries?
The modeling on that is pretty robust. A surface burst especially throws up so much contaminated material. Depending on the specific isotopes created and scattered, yes, parts of the city could remain dangerously radioactive for decades, hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. It redefines uninhabitable.
So the local impact is permanent, essentially. But what about containing it? Can it stay local?
Well, this is where the policy aspect becomes terrifying. The consistent outcome in Washington war games, simulations run over and over, is that any use of a nuclear weapon, even just one, almost inevitably leads to a full-scale exchange.
Escalation isn't just likely, it's almost built in.
It seems to be. The protocols, the military doctrines, they push towards rapid, massive response.
Which brings us to launch on warning. Explain that policy because it sounds incredibly risky.
It is incredibly risky. Launch on warning means that if your sensors, satellites, ground radar detect incoming enemy missiles, the decision to launch your own missiles in retaliation has to be made in mere minutes.
Minutes. Before the incoming ones even hit.
Exactly. Before they land and potentially destroy your own ability to retaliate. There's no time for deliberation, for confirming if it's a real attack or a system malfunction, a flock of birds, a computer error. We've had false alarms like that.
It's a hair trigger.
A total hair trigger, designed for a scenario where you can't afford to wait.
The sources use a specific scenario to illustrate this, the 72-minute war. How does that unfold?
It starts, in this scenario, relatively small but strategically devastating. A single North Korean missile hits Washington, D.C. Then, maybe a second one, launched from a submarine, hits the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant in California.
Hitting a nuclear power plant. That's not just about the bomb's explosion, is it?
No, that's a crucial multiplier. The bomb blast itself is bad, but then it ruptures the reactor containment, releasing all the highly radioactive material already inside the plant.
So it's like a massive dirty bomb spreading existing radiation far and wide.
Precisely. The initial blast might kill people nearby, say, in San Luis Obispo, but the radioactive plume, that could drift and deliver lethal doses to people hundreds of miles away, like in Los Angeles. It vastly increases the contaminated area.
Okay, so Diablo Canyon is hit. What happens next in this scenario?
The U.S. retaliates against North Korea, standard procedure. But here's the problem. The flight path for intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, from the U.S. to North Korea goes over Russian airspace.
And Russia sees these missiles flying overhead.
And their launch-on warning system kicks in. They misinterpret it as potentially the start of a massive U.S. first strike against them. They have minutes to decide.
And they launch.
In the scenario, yes. Russia launches perhaps 1,000 warheads at the U.S., which then triggers the full U.S. retaliatory response against Russia.
And suddenly we're in a full U.S.-Russia exchange.
Yeah.
What are the projected immediate casualties in that scenario?
Just using about a third of their available arsenals, so a little over 1,000 warheads each side on side. The immediate death toll, just from the blasts and the fireballs, is estimated at 360 million people.
360 million.
Yeah.
Dead at the moment of explosion.
Yes, and that number doesn't even begin to count the deaths from radiation sickness that would follow in the days and weeks after.
This is where the scale shifts again, isn't it? From the immediate horror to the truly global, long-term catastrophe, nuclear winter.
Right. This is the scientifically modeled consequence that takes us beyond even massive casualties into potentially the end of human civilization as we know it.
How does it work? What's the mechanism?
1,000 or more nuclear detonations, especially hitting cities and industrial areas, would ignite enormous firestorms. Think city-sized infernos. These fires pump huge quantities of black smoke, soot, into the upper atmosphere, the stratosphere.
And once it's up there?
It stays there for years, and it acts like a shield, blocking sunlight from reaching the Earth's surface.
Blocking the sun.
Globally.
Globally?
Yeah.
The result is a rapid, dramatic drop in global temperatures. The models show drops of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. That's 18 to 27 degrees Fahrenheit, especially in the northern hemisphere.
And this cold persists.
For up to a decade, maybe longer, which is catastrophic for one critical thing. Agriculture.
Farming becomes impossible.
Essentially, yes. Especially in the major breadbasket regions, North America, Europe, Asia. A decade of nuclear winter means a decade of global famine.
So the 360 million who die immediately, they're just the beginning. Tragically, yes. The modeling, based on a global population of around 7 billion at the time it was done, projected that over 5 billion people would die from starvation within about 2 years following that exchange.
5 billion out of 7. And today, the population is over 8 billion.
Meaning the starvation toll could potentially exceed 6 billion people. That is, by any definition, the end of organized human society. It doesn't matter who wins a war, everyone loses.
And as if that isn't enough, there's another global environmental disaster layered on top of the cold and the dark.
Yes, the destruction of the ozone layer. The intense heat of thousands of nuclear fireballs creates huge amounts of nitric oxides. These chemicals rise into the stratosphere and catalytically destroy ozone.
How much destruction are we talking about?
The models suggest around 70% of the global ozone layer could be wiped out.
70%. So for anyone who survives the blasts, the radiation, the cold, the starvation,
they'd be exposed to incredibly dangerous levels of ultraviolet radiation from the sun. This would cause widespread cancers, cataracts, suppress immune systems, and further damage any potential crops or plant life that might have survived the cold. It's just layer upon layer of catastrophe.
And underlying all of this constantly is the radiation, the invisible enemy, the part that truly defies time.
That's the unique signature. We've already detonated over 2,000 nuclear devices on this planet just through testing since 1945, and that legacy lingers.
It does. The sources mention the Marshall Islands, right? Testing ended there in 1958.
Yet, 70 years later, parts of those islands still have radiological contamination levels higher than Chernobyl or Fukushima exclusion zones. It just doesn't go away easily.
And even the atmospheric tests. Before the 1963 treaty, though, China and France continued. After those tests had consequences far beyond the test sites.
Absolutely. Tests conducted in Nevada, for instance, produced radioactive fallout that was carried by wind currents all across the United States. It would then get deposited by rain, literally raining down radioactive isotopes onto American soil, crops, water supplies.
And the danger comes because our bodies can mistake these isotopes for elements we need.
Exactly. That's the insidious part. They mimic essential nutrients, so your body absorbs them.
Let's talk about three specific ones the sources highlight, because they show how the danger persists biologically. Iodine-131.
Iodine-131 has a relatively short half-life, only about 8 days. But it's produced in large amounts and travels quickly through the environment, especially onto grass eaten by cows.
So it gets into milk.
Into milk, yes. When people, especially children, drink contaminated milk, the iodine-131 behaves just like normal iodine and concentrates in the thyroid gland. This direct irradiation of the thyroid leads to a high risk of thyroid cancer later on.
Okay. Then there's strontium-90. Longer half-life.
Much longer, about 30 years. And the key thing about strontium-90 is that chemically, it's very similar to calcium.
So the body thinks it's calcium.
And incorporates it into bones and teeth, and especially into bone marrow where blood cells are made. It stays there for decades, constantly irradiating the bone marrow. This is strongly linked to leukemia and other bone cancers. It was known as the atomic bomb disease among Hiroshima survivors.
And the third one, cesium-137.
Also a 30-year half-life. Cesium acts like potassium in the body.
Potassium's everywhere in our tissues, right? Muscles, organs.
Exactly. So cesium-137 gets distributed throughout the soft tissues, including muscles and even the brain. It leads to an increased risk of various soft tissue cancers like sarcomas and potentially brain cancers. And because of that 30-year half-life, both strontium-90 and cesium-137 remain dangerous in the environment for centuries.
But the ultimate example of permanence has to be plutonium.
Plutonium is something else entirely. Some isotopes, like plutonium-239, which is used in weapons, have a half-life of around 24,000 years.
24,000 years.
Which means it will be detectable in the environment, in the geology of the planet, for hundreds of thousands of years. We're literally creating poisons that will outlast any conceivable human civilization. It's geological scale contamination.
If the science is this clear, this devastating, why do these policies, like launch on warning, still exist? The sources suggest we've been incredibly lucky so far.
Luck seems to be a major factor, unfortunately. The history is full of near misses, accidents. Did you know there are reportedly around 50 nuclear warheads currently lost on the ocean floor? Dropped accidentally from planes, lost in submarine incidents.
50. Just
Lost. And there was that terrifying incident in South Carolina where a B-52 accidentally dropped a hydrogen bomb in someone's backyard. It didn't detonate, thankfully, only the very last of several safety mechanisms held.
That's chilling. And then there's the most famous close call, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
October 1962. Especially Black Saturday, October 27th. Tensions were at their absolute peak. We now know that on a Soviet submarine, deep underwater, cut off from Moscow, the commanders were considering launching a nuclear torpedo against U.S. warships.
And they almost did.
2 out of the 3 senior officers on board agreed to launch, but the third, a man named Vasily Arkhipov, refused to give his consent. Protocol required all 3. His refusal, that single act of dissent under immense pressure, likely prevented a nuclear exchange that day. He arguably saved the world.
That crisis did seem to shake things up, at least temporarily. Kennedy pushed for the test ban treaty afterwards.
Yes, he seemed genuinely changed by how close they came. He gave that famous speech saying, "We must abolish these weapons before they abolish us."
Yet here we are, decades later. The core policies, massive retaliation, launch on warning, they're still largely in place. Daniel Ellsberg called them dizzyingly insane and immoral.
It's hard to argue with that assessment when you look at the consequences. The logic of deterrence seems to demand we maintain a system that guarantees our own annihilation if it's ever actually used.
And we're not just maintaining it, we're actively modernizing it. That multi-trillion-dollar plan.
Yes, the U.S. is deep into a massive nuclear modernization program, started under Obama, continued since. Estimates run up to $2 trillion over the next few decades.
$2 trillion to upgrade weapons we already know could end civilization.
And here's a key point from the sources. The U.S. currently spends more on its nuclear arsenal than all other nuclear-armed nations combined. It raises the question, why the continued massive investment when we already possess overkill capacity many times over? It points to a kind of institutional inertia, a failure to escape the Cold War logic of mutually assured destruction.
A very expensive failure, and one that arguably encourages other countries to pursue these weapons.
That's the proliferation risk. We now have 9 countries with nuclear weapons, including North Korea, which demonstrably has missiles capable of reaching the U.S. If the argument is nuclear weapons keep us safe, well, then every nation logically wants them. It becomes a perverse incentive, almost a license to act badly under a nuclear shield.
It's a risk reflected in the doomsday clock, isn't it? Currently set perilously close to midnight.
89 seconds to midnight, as of the latest setting. It's a symbolic measure, of course, but it reflects the scientific community's assessment of global risk.
Hmm.
Interestingly, the sources noted a historical trend. The clock often moved further from midnight under Republican presidents like Eisenhower, Nixon, Reagan, Bush Sr., who pursued arms control treaties, and often closer under Democrats, though JFK after Cuba is a major exception, pushing for the test ban treaty.
It's a complex history, but the present reality seems stark. We have scientific certainty about global catastrophe, nuclear winter, ozone loss from a major exchange.
The science on that is robust, yes. And we have policy structures like launch on warning that make escalation incredibly difficult to stop once it starts, coupled with that history of near misses due to accident or miscalculation.
Which leads us to a final provocative thought based on everything we've discussed. If the science guarantees that a major nuclear war means self-assured destruction, SAD, not mad for everyone, regardless of who started it or who wins.
And if our policies, like massive retaliation on warning, commit us to ensuring that destructive outcome happens,
Then what is the actual moral or even strategic difference between being the nation that initiates a nuclear war and being the nation whose policy guarantees that the end result is the same global permanent annihilation through retaliation?
if the outcome is guaranteed self-destruction either way, is the purpose of the arsenal truly defense anymore? Or is it just about ensuring we can enact the ultimate catastrophic revenge even as our own civilization collapses?
That's the unsettling question the sources leave us with. What does security mean if the policy designed to ensure it actually guarantees extinction upon failure?
A question humanity still desperately needs to answer.